Empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sarah Kaki and Shauna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. I'm Sarah Kaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and I'm joined by our very own managing partner, Shauna Woods. Shauna, our topic today makes some people mad.
That's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about finding compassion for the narcissist you've been dealing with, you have dealt with, or you're feeling stuck with. I think that's the reason we're concerned about this making some people mad, is because if you are married to a narcissist or you're related to a narcissist, you might have felt a lot of abuse from them. You might have felt a lot of gaslighting, probably taken years to even realize what you've been facing. And sometimes even realizing that you're not the crazy one, but you're dealing with a crazy maker. How is it possible to, at some point, find compassion for your abuser?
I think you hit on a key couple words there. You said at some point. Or when you're first dealing with the fresh trauma of dealing with the narcissist, either still currently married to the person or co-parenting, subsequent to a divorce, or a family member, right? And you're still feeling that trauma and you're still dealing with that trauma. It is really hard to have compassion for the person who instilled that trauma in you. So the first thing I think you have to do is work through your own stuff. Right? You have to get help before you can have compassion for someone else. You have to heal before you can give that compassion, especially to the person who was the perpetrator of that abuse.
I thought of this when I was talking to one of our clients, a female business owner who was married to a narcissist for many years. And he tried to isolate her from family, try to isolate her from growing her business, try to isolate her even from her relationship with their son. And for many years, she just really thought something's wrong with her. And she was working very hard on herself to be a better spouse, be a better mom, be better at her job. And at some point through therapy and through trying everything and realizing that this person doesn't want the best for me. This person just wants to recreate the drama cycle over and over with me. This is a toxic person I'm dealing with. The blindfold kind of came off and she realized that, whoa, I'm actually been enrolled in a abusive relationship and I've played a part in it and I've enabled it. And once she worked through that and accepted her part in it and accepted that she was playing along in the narcissist narrative and agreed that it no longer worked for her and it didn't serve her anymore, she was able to work towards what does she want for herself? What are her life goals? What's the relationship she wants with her child? What's what she wants in her future? And what does she want for her business and how she wants to grow her business? And she started moving towards that direction, and the narcissist behavior became more and more erratic because they were losing control. And the problem was it no longer had a sting on her. His abuse, his words, his actions were completely ineffective. It's almost like that drama triangle we talk about from the Power of Ted book that we've mentioned a few times in this book. You have the perpetrator, you have the rescuer, and you have the victim. And when the persecutor is no longer able to keep you in the victim role, you're just not playing along with that anymore. You've moved yourself out of that dysfunction drama triangle into a triangle of empowerment. I am a creator and I want to be a coach for the people in my life, or I want to be a challenger for the people in my life, or I want to be a teacher for the people in my life, not a persecutor, not a victim, not a rescuer. It's almost like you are speaking to a person from another dimension.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. To use the buzzwords out there, when you are no longer triggered by the narcissist, they lose their supply.
Yes.
And once they lose their supply, they do lose it a little bit. They're going to try to get it by doing more, right?
And they get more erratic.
They get more out of control with all of the things that the narcissists do. But just like what you're saying with this wonderful businesswoman who decided, no, that's no longer working for me. I'm not going to be in this dynamic anymore. Once she's been able to remove herself from it, right? That's when you're able to be compassionate.
Right.
Because you're able to see that person a little bit at a distance, right? And to keep them in that and say, I understand now why they're acting how they're acting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not letting those actions affect me.
So we had this podcast episode on understanding, and
Yes.
that's where compassion comes from. Being able to understand someone and then gaining compassion from there, because you can't have compassion for something you can't understand.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you are validating that their behavior is okay. It doesn't mean that you are enrolling it, engaging in it. But you may be able to, from afar, because now you are in a different dimension. You're in a empowerment dimension, while they're in a drama and toxicity dimension. You can, from that sort of higher level of awareness, look at them and say, man, they're stuck in an emotional age. And we've talked about that in a previous episode. Man, something must have not been gone right for them some point in life, and they never healed from there. They never outgrew that. Or maybe they had a really rough childhood and they never outgrew that. And they are still fighting for that child to get its validation, its self-esteem, its need to be special, its appreciation, all of those things. And I can't participate in that, but man, I have compassion for that.
Absolutely. And that is exactly where I think we need to come from, is thinking they didn't get here alone. Right. Our personalities are so informed and formed by all of the things that we went through as a child. And when you do the reading on it, you're right. There's actually two types of what we see formations of narcissists, and there's a couple of different types of narcissists. But what you're talking about is the trauma, right? Mm-hmm. Or the lack of support or neglect, and that's why they're constantly seeking that validation. And for me, that's easier to be compassionate for than the other type, which are formed by being basically what we used to call the spoiled child or the overindulged child. You know, they grew up with parents who every time they lifted a finger said, oh my God, nobody has lifted a finger before, look at this child. And really to treat them in that way, that they thought they really were more important than everyone else.
Entitled, never had to earn anything.
Very entitled. Think of the comic strip Richie Rich kind of idea. And this doesn't always have to come with money. You know, there's always...
Oh, it could be emotional.
It could be emotional. Nobody's ever going to be good enough for my son or my daughter, that kind of thing. So, but those for me, that type of narcissist is harder to have compassion for. But I do take a step back and realize that wasn't them doing it. They weren't born thinking, you know, they're the most important thing in the world, that it was their parents and how that was a different type of parental abuse. I do struggle with that. I'm not going to lie.
I think overall it is hard to ask somebody to have compassion for a narcissist, because there's very little vulnerability or authenticity about a narcissist, right? Everything is coming from a place of taking. Everything's coming from a place of gaining one up on you, putting you down to win, or exposing false, charming personality that isn't real. It's not authentic. So when you're seeing the good side of them, it's inauthentic. And when you're seeing the ugly side of them, it's harmful to you. Yes. So it's really hard to get to this place, but I do recall with this client when I could actually see her telling me all these things he continues to do, such as reaching out to her family members, reaching out to her friends, saying terrible things about her, trying to create more conflict between her and her family, or her and her friends. And she almost said these things about him, like she felt sad for him. Like, man, I'm here building this amazing business, you know, being profitable in my life and building this relationship with my son. I'm finding kind of coming out of being so isolated by him, making some quality friendships and growing my relationship with my parents, and all this effort he's putting into energy and effort and thought he's putting into bringing me down instead of working on himself, and it's not working, and it's just sad.
Yeah.
And it was empowering. It was so empowering after all those years of marriage. She had that feeling towards him instead of feeling like a victim.
Right.
Or feeling of what's wrong with me, I need to fix myself, or just feeling broken.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and think that she set some really healthy boundaries with him.
Yes.
Even while having compassion. And I think therein lies a little crux of what we want to get at with most of our conversations regarding narcissists, is that if you don't set these boundaries, if you allow them to continue to get the reaction that they want, right? And continue to abuse you, you're not going to be able to have compassion for them because you're still lost in this cycle.
Well, they're bringing you back into their dimension.
Right. And also, there's two things that I do want to... Just having compassion for a person does not mean that you're going to allow them to be part of your life.
Absolutely. That, I think men and women, but mostly women, need to hear that.
Yes.
Because that's our maternal instinct. Something strokes our compassion, our mother caretaker instincts kick in, and we want to go take care of it.
Absolutely. I have a person who I considered a good friend for a number of years, like 4 or 5 years. And I had to cut ties with this person because of how their actions made me feel and made me react. I did not like how I was showing up in this relationship, and we've talked to it before. And this was just a friend. I have a lot of love and compassion for this woman. I simply have no desire to have her in my life because it's not healthy for me to have her around when she can't change. So again, that's why I'm thinking, even this marriage, right? I can have this compassion for a person. Doesn't mean I have to stay married.
Right. And you may not be the right person to even help them gain that awareness. That's the other part of being in a toxic relationship and realizing I'm not even showing up. I don't like who I am here, right?
Right.
You may be the worst person that can even challenge that toxic person to step out of that dimension. So the best thing you could do sometimes is get out of there yourself and hope that it's a waking call for them. In our divorce cases, I see clients who reach this level. I'm going to keep using the word dimension because I'm liking it. I like the sort of graphic that puts in our minds. When they reach that dimension of empowerment and they completely left behind that dysfunctional triangle, the drama triangle, they're able to so much better figure out how to navigate through their divorce. Because sometimes with the narcissist, if we can let their words and let their actions and their erratic behavior lose its sting and lose its control, and we somewhat become fearless over it, they lose that hold, that grip they have on you, and you're able to make much better calculated decisions. Some examples I can think of is when, they want to be viewed a certain way, right, of how the divorce happened. It's very clear that this was an abusive relationship. Client had to get out of it, but that person might have some sort of status in the community, might have some sort of way of wanting to be viewed, and can we hand that ego to them in order and let them be right about who they think they are and how they want to be perceived in order to get our client what they want. And if you have a client that's removed themselves far enough out of the drama triangle and is now in an empowered dimension, they may say, sure, let me be the bad guy. Let him think whatever he wants to think and, make this irreconcilable differences or whatever, and we move on. Yeah.
It is so important when negotiating with a narcissist that you find some way, even if it's a small way, to quote unquote, let them get the win.
Yes.
And they need that to be able to walk away. They need the last word. They need to have that last negotiation. So that if you're going to make an offer of settlement, you want to build something in there that is your giveaway, right? That they're going to come back and say, absolutely not, I'm not doing that. We weren't really asking for that anyway.
We call that disarming the narcissist.
Yes.
And we will have a separate episode on that. It's a good one, Shauna. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.